listeners. Welcome to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and with Corey.
Hello,
And
everybody. How are you today?
uh, Unlocking Your Truth is broadcast on 101.7 FM across the Fraser Valley and also from the unceded territory of the Stolo Nation on CIVL. But you can also catch the show before it airs if you join our Awaken Your Psychic Abilities Facebook group or if you subscribe to my YouTube channel.
Yep.
Uh,
Especially because this podcast specifically won't play on our website till November.
right. So if you're one of my followers, then you get to see the information and the material ahead of time. So if you're listening and you're not yet a subscriber to the Awaken Your Psychic Abilities Facebook group, then go ahead and sign up. Or if you don't like Facebook, you could watch on YouTube and subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Because this one's going to be interesting because I don't think a lot of people know about pragmatic intuition. It's not a common one that people like will talk about.
Well, isn't that funny? Because I almost feel like the opposite is true because it's a more accessible form of intuition. And there have been books written about practical intuition because pragmatic intuition is practical, everyday intuition. In fact, I guess it was a New York Times bestseller book. I can't remember the author's name, and it was called Practical Intuition. And really, it was solely about this form of intuition.
Yeah, but
you
the
know,
thing is, most people just think of that as a gut feeling or intuition in itself, as opposed to the term pragmatic intuition.
yeah. So pragmatic just means practical, everyday intuition. And of course, listeners, before we get into that, that is the subject of today's show. But I just want to mention that we've been doing a series on intuition and chakras in celebration of my book that was published earlier this year. And the book is called Intuition and Chakras.
Yeah.
Yay. And in the book, amongst many other things that the book talks about, we go through all of the seven chakras and talk about all of the different ways that you can be psychic, all of the different ways that you can be intuitive. And also just go through a process of helping you figure out your psychic ability blueprint, your unique profile of psychic abilities that you have to help you fulfill your purpose this lifetime.
I finally
So
got my copy
that, yes, that's great.
and I'm reading it backwards.
Are you like a Chinese person?
Yeah, because we're doing the show back to front. So,
Yeah, we are. And I was interviewed today by
wow.
Robert Sharp on his show on uh, Bite Me Radio, and he asked, "No, that's not the name of the show. I should better remember the name of the show because it's
Hi, our show airs on Bite Me Radio.
it's called Bringing Inspiration to the Earth Show." And he asked me, "Why did you write this book?" And it reminded me why I wrote the book and why I wrote the book. And it goes back all the way to the beginning of this radio show. And at the start of the radio show, we had this thing called a free card reading, where people could write in with one question, their most pressing question, and we would answer it for them on the radio show. That was before we had the chat room in Facebook and YouTube when people had to phone in. And we got over 1,000 people who wrote in. And the most commonly asked question was some version of, why am I here? And what is my life purpose? And it's like everyone believes that they have a purpose, but most people don't really feel lost when thinking about what their purpose is. So that was one of the seeds of inspiration that caused me to write the book, along with the fact that every single one of you has a unique profile of psychic abilities, your intuition blueprint or your psychic ability blueprint, that contains all of the skills and abilities and exactly what you need to fulfill your purpose this lifetime. And so that's taken from a special consultation with me called a psychic ability blueprint, where I give you a reading of your chakras and your psychic abilities, and we relate it to your life purpose. And so I knew this information about how the chakra system and how the psychic abilities relate to life purpose, and I wanted to share it with more people. And so that's how the idea for writing this book was born, was to help people not only tap into their psychic abilities, but also realize their life purpose and use their higher guidance to help them realize their life purpose. And so that's the story of how the book was born. Now, the book is actually, it's in three parts, it's in three sections. And the first section gives you a really strong foundation in understanding the chakra system, the auric field or the human energy field, what is life purpose and different ways of looking at life purpose, also what can block your intuition and what wrong information, what myths are out there about intuition. And then the second part of the book, which is what this series on our radio show is all about, is where we travel, take a journey together through the chakra system and through 22 different psychic abilities. And in the book, we start with the seventh chakra and we kind of work our way backwards. In the show, we started with the first chakra, and now we're all the way up to the fifth chakra. And we've already covered shows on the survival instinct, clairsentience, which is about being an empath and being empathic, energy distribution, out of body experience and out of body memory, so astral travel, as well as the heart chakra, oneness and affinity. And this is the fifth show on the fifth chakra. And so we already talked about clairaudience, the ability to hear as spirit. We talked about the inner voice, which is the voice of your higher being communicating with you. We also did a couple of shows on broadband telepathy and narrowband telepathy. So today we are completing our journey into the fifth chakra, and we're going to learn all about pragmatic intuition. And I like to read from my book, really, in some sense, and then just talk about it. So I'll share with you some of the information in the book. And then if you're listening live, then you can add your comments and you can ask questions. And Corey will be there looking at all the activity both on YouTube and on Facebook. So he's going to watch your questions and watch your comments and share them live on air.
I sure will, because that's
Yes.
the best. I find that, well, I love your talk, but I also, find the interaction between you and the listeners to be the most fun part of it all.
Yes, I agree. I agree. And of course, everybody, um, in a way, you don't need me to read the book to you. You can buy the book, it's very inexpensive. And
Plug
then
the book.
reference it for yourself. I will. And also, the other thing I did with this book, which I don't think many authors do, is I gave a gift to all of my readers, which is a 5-part training in energy techniques. So when you buy the book, you get a special link that you click, and that will take you to this private training where you get to not only read about these techniques, but directly experience them yourself. So
What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link on the book so people can download the first chapter if they want.
okay. Okay, put a link to the book page, or put a link to the Llewellyn has a page where the first chapter is.
Yep.
If you know which one that is, it's on issue.com.
Oh, I know.
Okay, that's great. So everybody, let's just talk about pragmatic intuition and what it is. And so I'm going to just read a little bit. So if you've had the experience of knowing who was calling before answering your ringing phone, or if you could leave that parking spot 3 blocks away because you knew you could get one right outside the door, then you've experienced pragmatic intuition. A classic example of this form of intuition is bringing an umbrella on a sunny day, which might seem a bit ridiculous because it's a sunny day, or bringing a pair of sunglasses on a rainy day, also which might seem a bit ridiculous, but only to be vindicated later by a change in the weather. And you were perfectly well equipped to deal with it because you brought your sunglasses or your umbrella. That's practical, pragmatic, everyday intuition that helps you deal with practical, everyday matters in a practical way. So if you've had these surprisingly common experiences, it may not have just been a lucky guess. It may have been your pragmatic intuition, because it's a form of intuition that helps you deal with practical affairs and helps you act on that information for practical gain. It's not necessarily about making a huge leap forward or having an amazing ecstatic spiritual experience or making an ingenious breakthrough. Instead, it feels more like plain old common sense, or really like this process of following the breadcrumbs. Through your pragmatic intuition, there might be a little breadcrumb that you follow, and then another breadcrumb. But eventually, by the time you follow the full trail of breadcrumbs, it gets you to your goal. But you may not have a big insight into, the full on destination. You're just following the little practical signs and signals as you go.
Yeah, one of the things you can do for that, I find is really helpful to realize how wonderful that is work backwards in your life a little bit. Don't live in the past, but just see, like every time you've reached a goal, how did you get there? What did you do? What type of decisions did you make? What type of intuition, what type of gifts did you use to get there? Because there's always a path, and like the old saying goes, when one door opens and one door closes, another one opens. This is very true with this too. And you can see how your progression works, because just being here right now and thinking forward doesn't work. You don't see how wonderful things are.
Yeah. I'll share an example that actually Corey and I both shared together. It's an example in the book, just an example of pragmatic intuition. So before the days of COVID, we used to be out there in the community doing events. And one of the events we used to do was Pagan Pride, because it was a lovely summer outdoor event with, tents and everything
It was wonderful. Yeah.
in Trout Lake in Vancouver. And so we'd signed up for this event a few years ago, and we woke up in the morning and we said, and we would always show up. If we'd signed up for an event, if we'd paid to be there, we would show up, and we went, it's just something this morning that just says no. And so we didn't go. And there was a massive storm that brought down a tree on top of the tents. And thankfully, nobody was injured, but it would have been on the place where our tent would have been positioned. So
Yeah,
that's
that was amazing. Eh?
yeah, that's an example of pragmatic intuition.
And the interesting, both of us had the same feeling. Like neither of us said it to each other. And then finally we started talking. And said, I really don't feel good about going to this. And you said, yeah, me too.
Yeah,
So we
yeah, and
decided
we did,
no.
and we didn't, and so we didn't go.
Yeah.
Another example is, again from my life, is I had an appointment downtown Vancouver, um, somewhere like the passport office. I don't think it was the passport office, but somewhere like that. And I went with somebody else, and they finished their appointment before I did. And they were supposed to wait for me, and they didn't wait for me. So I didn't know where they were. And I said, oh, gosh. So I walked out of the offices where I was, turned right, turned right again, turned right again, stepped into a shop, and there they were. Well, I had no idea. They were supposed to wait for me. There was no discussion about going to a shop. I didn't know that area of town, but somehow my pragmatic intuition led me exactly to where that person had gone. So that's another example of it. And I'm sure as we share our examples, you, the listeners, can recollect your own examples of practical intuition. And I am going to give you a few more clues about what it feels like to have practical intuition, again from my book. So it's a form, it's like I've said before, it's a form of everyday intuition, and we probably have other names for it. Common sense probably is another name for it sometimes, you know. So if you're a very organized person, if you're good at time management, if you're always prepared for every eventuality, with an infinite sense of how to get the best out of people, it's possible that you're using that form of intuition to help you. You might be using it if you tend to implement practical decisions versus procrastinating. Um, Immediately know what is possible given what's available to you. You can easily separate what's possible from what isn't, and can readily condense group opinions into a practical course of action. So we'll continue talking about practical intuition or pragmatic intuition after the break. And listeners, you're tuning in to Unlocking Your Intuition with Dr. Leslie and with Corey.
Unlocking your truth, you mean?
Yes, Unlocking Your Intuition is my intuition training course. I guess that was a Freudian slip.
Yes, that was. But no, it's okay. No problem. We have a question for you after the break. So,
Sounds good. Welcome back, listeners. You're tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and with Corey.
that's me.
And welcome to the show if you're just tuning in. If you're just tuning in, we are continuing our series on intuition and chakras. We've been all about the fifth chakra for the last few weeks, and today it's our last session on the fifth chakra, and we're talking about pragmatic or practical intuition. And of course, the fifth chakra, it's the one that relates to communication. And you know, and I guess pragmatic practical intuition is it's just that immediate communication with your everyday needs, with the everyday steps that you can take to make your life work. And we were giving some examples before the break, and I can give some more examples a bit later. But you know, now we're rolling into the time when we really want the listeners to share their comments, their stories, and to ask questions as well. So I believe Corey said before the break that we do have a question.
We have two actually.
Okay.
And the first one's from Sharon. And Sharon says, can pragmatic intuition cross lifetimes?
Yeah, any form of intuition can cross lifetimes. And so I'm not exactly, you might have a specific thing that you mean there, but I would say different lifetimes you have a different psychic ability profile, because the purpose of each lifetime could be different. So in some lifetimes, certain forms of intuition may be emphasized over others. In certain lifetimes, different challenges associated with developing and expanding your intuition might be emphasized over others. But it is certainly possible to carry forward different traits from one lifetime to another. And for example, a lot of you people listen to this, you listen to this show because you're really into this psychic stuff. And why are you really into this psychic stuff? It's possible it just started this lifetime, but it's more likely that you have other lifetimes where you have used your psychic abilities. And so it's kind of like a specialty for you. It's a theme. It's something that you love to do, and you come back time and time again, and you know, get into it in different ways. So yes, you may have pragmatic intuition in other lifetimes and other forms of intuition as well. So it's quite common for people who are interested in developing their psychic abilities to have a whole string of past lives. You know, maybe you've been a reader at one of the ancient oracles, like the Oracle of Delphi. Maybe you've been, you know, a pagan at the time of the Spanish Inquisition, you know, and burnt as a witch. You know, maybe you've been a healer. Maybe you've been around in that time of the Egyptian mystery schools or ancient Tibet or any of those other places that were where we were learning and practicing these abilities. So the short answer is yes. And I guess I just gave you the long answer, which I could, you know, witter on about even more, but I think we'll see what the next question is.
The next question we have is from Nate. Nate says, do you ever have these feelings, but it turns out you were wrong?
I don't, yeah, I sometimes have those feelings and hope I'm wrong. I've got an example in my life right now, which I won't share on air, but you know, it's one of those practical forms of intuition that I actually had some time ago about someone else in their life, someone important to me. And, you know, it is all unraveling in their life right now. And I hoped at the time I was wrong, and I still hope now that I'm wrong. So sometimes your intuition doesn't always bring pleasant insights, and it can give you a dilemma about whether you should share it. Like, I have a very strict set of guidelines for myself when it comes to my psychic abilities. If somebody has asked me if they've booked a session with me or they're a student of mine, then they're asking me, you know, please share your insights. But if it's a friend, for example, who maybe doesn't even believe in this kind of stuff, what do you do if you have an insight? And you know, you can't just go and impose it on people necessarily. So have I ever had a pragmatic intuition and been wrong? I can't think of an example of that. I can think of an example where where I've had something that felt like it could be a premonition and it being wrong. And I'll explain why. Years ago, I used to be, before I was able to just do this stuff through my waking consciousness, I used to do it through my dreams. And I was really into dreams. I kept a dream diary. I recorded my dreams on a tape recorder, paid a lot of close attention to my dreams. And I had a lot of premonitions through my dreams that came true in my own life about things that would happen and people I would meet, and also world stage premonitions. And so on occasion, I would have a dream about, well, I had a couple of premonitions about airplane crashes that came true. But I also had one which I felt, it felt so real that it would come true, and it didn't. And of course, a premonition is a bit different than pragmatic intuition in a way, but I explain that by the fact that the future is not set in stone. In our dreams, we explore different potential realities. And so, on a mass consciousness level, that could have been a disaster that we were playing with, trying to decide whether we would manifest it into physical reality, and we never manifested it into physical reality. So even though it might seem I was wrong, I don't really feel like I was wrong. I just feel like it's just our mass consciousness playing in different realms and playing out into the physical in different ways. And I'll just share another anecdote. I once knew a lady, I can't remember her name now, probably about 15 years ago, and she was a psychic. And she said she basically developed her whole psychic abilities through pragmatic intuition. Because she said the way that she developed her psychic abilities was she used to use public transport. So when she was waiting for the bus, she would say to herself, the bus is going to be here in exactly 30 seconds, you know, or the bus, I sense that the bus is en route and it'll be another minute, or it's going to be late today. And she did that every day, every time that she was standing at a bus stop. And she really honed her practical intuition through that. And of course, sometimes she was wrong, sometimes she was right, but the more she did it, the more often and the more frequently that she was right. And predicting when a bus is going to come is a bit different than a premonition, isn't it? Because the bus is already en route, it's already happening, it's already in reality.
I find one of the ones I just recalled, one of the ones I've had often that have not been um, actual, didn't come into actuality, was the parking one, where I would say I want a parking spot right in front of the building, and I get there and there was no parking spot. However, when I used to go, I know there's a parking spot in front of the building, there would be one. I think there's a very slight difference between those two. I want and I know. One is you're trying to manifest, or you have that desire and want. You're manifesting the want. You're not manifesting the actual
Yeah.
outcome. And so I think there's a little bit of a hazy place in between where you could think that you're tuning into your pragmatic intuition, but you're actually tuning into wants and desires.
Yeah, and the parking spot one is it, whenever I do that, I manifest. I purposefully manifest. I'm not using my pragmatic intuition. I'm just manifesting a parking spot. Um,
Or
but
knowing where there is a parking
yes, yeah,
spot,
yeah,
like
yeah,
not
exactly.
just saying that, oh, I want a parking spot, but hey, like it's a really big, there's a parking spot around the corner. Or when you go, well, I hope there's a parking spot around this corner because there have
Yeah.
been before.
You've got pretty good pragmatic intuition, because I've noticed with you, if we are expecting a parcel and you never practically know from the mail the day it's going to be delivered on. It might say it'll be delivered on this date or between these dates, but it's never that accurate, and often it's late. You always know we're expecting it today, but it's not going to come, or it's going to come today.
That's true. Yeah,
Yeah, it is.
it does make itself very clear to me that, and again, it's not a hope or it's not a desire. It's just I know it's going to come today. It's going to show up.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like you're tuning into the fact that it's practically in physical reality en route. It's like there's a difference between um, knowing that the phone is going to ring, um, and when the phone is already ringing, knowing who's on the other end. Okay, so if the phone's already ringing and you go, okay, that's my friend Sylvia, that's your pragmatic intuition. If you're going, I think that Sylvia's going to phone me at some point today. I guess it could be your telepathy, it could be a premonition, or it could be, practical intuition, sort of like a combo of those.
Okay, I've got a comment and a question from Tracy.
Yeah.
And Tracy says, I definitely have pragmatic intuition and it works well for me. And I think this is just a repeat of the previous question. It says, what about when you think you know something about someone by using your intuition, but you turn out to be wrong?
So I was just talking about that in a way.
It's a little different. This is about
I
somebody as opposed to,
yeah, I think it depends on the circumstances. I think different things can be going on there. You could be projecting something onto this person. I don't know, let's make something up. Let's say you're projecting that it's you think your intuition is saying that's a really mean person. Meanwhile, there's something about that person that reminds you of your dad who used to be mean to you, and you're projecting your stuff over the top of that person. So that's not really your intuition, that's you projecting, but you might mistake it for your intuition. So um, I think it depends what it is that you're talking about. So if you want to give a more specific example of that, I can comment more specifically.
I have a good one from Chrissy as well. Chrissy says, I had a dream when something happened to me similar to an experience a friend has had in their life. If they, okay, let me repeat that again. I had a dream where something happened to me similar to an experience a friend has had in their life if they stay the night. Is that considered a message calling me to speak to them about healing?
I don't understand that completely. So
I'll
she's
read
had
it
a
to you again.
she
Okay, let me try to rephrase it. I had a dream when something happened to me similar to an experience a friend has had, and it looks like she usually gets this feeling when they stay over for the night. Is that
oh,
considered a message calling me to speak to them about healing?
again, I probably need a bit more information. Okay, so I'm going to repeat it back so that I make sure I understand the question. So you have a dream about when a friend stays the night, you have a dream about them and about some circumstances in the friend's life. And is that telling you that you should talk to the friend about healing? Well, if I go back to my sort of psychic ethics that I was talking about earlier, I don't think you're ever obligated to share information with somebody. But I think if it's a good friend, you could start off by saying, hey, I had this dream and this is what happened in the dream, and be neutral about it, and then if the friend is interested, um, you could and have a discussion about, well, what do you think the dream means? And you could say, well, I think the dream, it might be a healing dream, and and it might pertain to you in this way. But and so I would just perhaps broach it in that way. So it could be, um let me just take a look, give me a second.
It,
So this is
she just clarified it a little bit. She
okay.
says it's when the person stays at their home, when they stayed at my house, she said. But it's not a dream about them, but about herself, where their life event or experience happened to her.
Yeah. Okay, so in the dream state, we think of ourselves as very separate individuals. But in the dream state, we're more fluid. And so it's possible for us to experience ourselves or experience another person's perspective in the dream state. And you could just be doing that because there's some benefit to you in looking out at the world through her eyes. I'll share an example of that that's in my book. And it's actually under the section on precognition. So, and this is a true story. I met a lady at a party once, and she used to work in the intelligence service, and but she just retired. But I guess because her focus was very much on intelligence, she had this very rich dream life where she had a lot of premonitions about terrorism and terrorist attacks before they happened. And there was one that happened, a terrorist attack on, I think it was in Turkey or Cyprus or somewhere like that, where a gunman just showed up on the beach with a machine gun and something like that, and shot a bunch of people. And a night or two before that happened, she had a dream about it. And in the dream, she was not herself. She was literally in the body of different tourists that were living through that event. And she saw it through the eyes of a few different people. Then 2 days later, when it happened, she watched it on the news, and the two of the people that she'd been in her dream were being interviewed by the newscaster. So she'd been in her dream as though she was in that person's body, experiencing what they experienced in the terror attacks. And then she recognized them, and they were being interviewed about their story, which was exactly what she'd experienced in her dream that they were then telling the newscaster about. And her take on why that was happening was that it was not about her abilities, it was not about her being special, but it was more about being able to say, hey, we are one. We are part of the same family. I am you and you are me. We are each other. We are together in this. So she felt that the message to her was that we're not so separate, that we should look out for each other, look after each other. And maybe that's a similar thing for you in your dream. So we must go for a break, and we'll talk more about pragmatic intuition on unlocking your truth when we get back. Welcome back, listeners. You're tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and Corey. We're continuing our series on intuition and chakras. We're doing another show on the fifth chakra, which is the one that's located in the cleft of your throat and has to do with all different forms of communication, including tonight's subject, which is pragmatic or practical everyday intuition.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and of course, the last part of the show, we always like to encourage the listeners to give us their questions and comments. And folks, if you're tuning in on air, or you're listening to this on the podcast, on the website, or on any of the other podcast platforms, if you want to participate live in the show, all you have to do is join the Awaken Your Psychic Abilities Facebook group, or subscribe to me on YouTube, and you get the show material actually ahead of when it's broadcast, ahead of when it comes out in the podcast.
You know what I'm finding this series is something's honing in for me as well in this series. That I mentioned this, I think 2 or 3 shows ago, that some of the psychic abilities are very close to some of the other psychic abilities. They're very similar. But when you look at this, when you start actually looking at all these different abilities and intuitions, because they're so close to each other, like sort of like what we're talking about today, and maybe a little precognition, right? But they're different. What it shows me is that many of us are having psychic experiences, but not actually realizing it.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Or we call it something else. I remember many years ago, one of my bosses said to me, "Do you have a photographic memory?" And I was like, "No, I don't think so." And he'd noticed that, I remembered pages of information. And when I look back, and that was just sort of normal to me. I guess I just, in a visual way, would to, tap into it. And that was my clairvoyance, right? So maybe one way that we call clairvoyance is, you've got a photographic memory, or well, anyway, I can't think right now, but I think you're right, Corey. And we have a really great quiz, which is the psychic ability quiz on my website, which is, it'll give you some clues, because it comes up with some of those practical everyday things that you might have experienced, and shows you how that relates to a psychic ability. And and really, that's one of the why I wrote my book, is to say, hey, you're all psychic, you're all having these experiences all the time. And so if you educate yourself a little bit about these different types of psychic abilities, and how they occur, and what it's like to have them, and what kinds of examples, because in the book I share uh, example, there are real life examples from my clients on every psychic ability, sometimes more than one. And they're real life examples from my own life as well, to give you, just to give you a sense of, oh, yes, that's happened to me, or I do that all the time, but I didn't really think that that was what it was. Because just as we all can talk, we all have our physical senses, we have our spiritual abilities as well. They are how we communicate as spirit. And after all, you are not your body, you are spirit. So when one day, when you no longer have this body, you will still communicate, and you will do it through your psychic abilities. And when it comes down to it all, that really they're all ways of tuning into energy. Everything is energy, whether it's light, whether it's sound waves, uh, and the different psychic abilities are ways of recognizing these light patterns and sound wave patterns, and different structured units of electromagnetic energy or other energy signals. So just like your physical senses are tuning into, like your eyes tune into a certain set of wavelengths, same thing for your ears, a certain set of vibrational levels. The same thing with the psychic abilities, but beyond what the physical senses can do.
Just a little. Chrissy just added something, and she said something along the, and I think you already answered everything. But sorry, she said the wording's a little confusing. And she said it would start like a conversation with them, and then about their father that passed away years ago. Then she would have a dream that her own father died, and then you know
Yeah,
they talked to me about how great of a dad they were.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's an
So
interesting. That's interesting.
I will comment on that as well. That in our dreams we prepare us. We both prepare ourselves for physical eventualities, and we practice for what will become manifest. In the case of somebody dying, well, we all know we're all going to die. We all know our parents are going to die. So oftentimes in our dreams, we will have a dream about a parent dying as a way of getting us prepared psychologically for that when it happens. And even the person who is getting close to passing away will be practicing their death um, in their dream state before it happens, right?
Hmm.
So so not our experience is infinite, and the astral plane is outside of time and space, so the content there is much broader than in physical reality. And so we may try on an event many different ways, and then there'll just be one form that manifests in physical reality out of all those different ways that we tried it. And when somebody passes away, that's a big event. And so everybody prepares themselves for that. So a friend's father dying may make you think about your father, who one day will die, and what's that going to be like, and how will I deal with that? And you may explore that idea in your dreams before it, even years ahead of it actually happening.
Wonderful. So Kirsty just commented, thank you so much, Dr. Leslie. That's so cool. Thanks so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
Okay, we have another question from Nate. And Nate says, on the fifth chakra, what could be some causes of a blockage for to the fifth chakra? And do you have any tips on how to clear it?
Yeah. Uh, I think that they're all listed. There's a lot of them listed in my book, but off the top of my head, um, self-doubt, fear of speaking up. Maybe you've been told as a child to shut up and be quiet. Don't speak until you're spoken to. Maybe when you've spoken up in the past, you've had your ideas shot down and you've lost your confidence about speaking up. So those can be some of them. And of course, none of the chakras are isolated on their own. So another common one might be uh, communicating about your emotional reality, communicating about your feelings. So a lot of people stuff their feelings down. They bite their tongue. They, avoid confrontation. And so one of the blocks can be about communicating your feelings, communicating boundaries, or even speaking authentically. So often we will just try to fit in with other people, try to fit in with society, and which results in us not speaking our truth. We just agree to get along when really that's not who we are. So those are some of the things that I can think of off the top of my head. Um, Let me just dip into, I'm sure we talk about in the book at the very beginning of the chapter on the chapter about the fifth chakra. Um,
Oh, there's all kinds of and of course your favorite is meditation. Meditation's a great way to unblock your
yeah,
chakras.
yeah. Oh, sorry. Sorry. I was still looking for the blocks.
Oh,
I hadn't even got on to. I forgot the second part of the thing. But yes, the second part of it would be, obviously it would be through meditation. And in all of my classes, I think I repeat this quite often these days, which is your developing your intuition is a twofold path. Part of it is learning about your psychic abilities and tuning into them and all of that, but the other part is healing yourself. And so in all of my courses there is a ton of information about how to let go of limiting beliefs, how to let go of past time energy, how to let go of programming from other people. Because really, that's the biggest thing. If you've been told to shut up, or you've been told that you're not any good, and you're walking around with that programming inside you, then that's going to be a block to your intuition. So you need to deprogram it, you need to de-energize it, you need to clear it from your system. So we have a ton of energy techniques. There are four or five energy techniques in this book that would help you with that. So there's a technique called grounding that's a way of releasing energy. There's a technique called uh, running earth energy, another one running cosmic energy, and another one which is teaching you how to consciously create and destroy. So destroy and release from your system energies that are not helping you, that are hindering you. And like I said, that there's a free course included with the book that teaches you, helps you to practice all of those energy techniques. And there's actually a free downloadable meditation on my website that will teach you grounding. And so you can release anything down your grounding core. And then there are specific techniques that you can use to work specifically with, working on clearing the fifth chakra. The other thing as well is um, we often think that, well, I'll get this cleared and then I'll be perfect and I'll have attained this perfect thing about myself, when really things can crop up. It's funny that I've been teaching you guys for the last 5 weeks about the fifth chakra. So of course now I'm in a fifth chakra growth cycle right now. It's funny, you can just see this, you can even see this. It's all activated. And I've been around for a long time doing this stuff. I've read thousands of my own past lifetimes, and I thought nobody could ever tell me about a past life I didn't know about. But I was interviewed on another show last week, and the host at the end of it always likes to share a little reading on his guests, and he said, "You were beheaded. You were beheaded by a queen, and there's something unresolved about it." And I was like, "Oh yeah, 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 yeah." And then boom, all this stuff started coming up about it. And so we are, we not only do we don't just clear our chakra once and then it's healed. It's every day. I talk about in my book your daily energy hygiene. You need to take care of your energy every day, be in tune with what's going on with you, what's your current growth cycle. And so you can, there's often layers of this stuff to clean out, and then there's new growth cycles around all of these things that come up. Hope that answers your question, Nate.
Well, yeah, he's commented. He says you hit it right on the head. I was very much silenced, and I was told too much to, and told I was too much to handle from adults, especially as a young child in school.
That's a common one. Too much to handle. All you powerhouses out there with all of these abilities, quite often that level of power frightens people. So they're like, shut down, turn that down, because we can't handle you. And then as an adult, you have to, rid yourself of all of that so that you can be your bright, beautiful self, which is why you're here and what you came to do and what you came to be. So the energy techniques in my book help you do that. So, yeah, I mean, that's another thing about this book is like, how do you get to be your authentic self? How do you get to be an awakened human? This is a roadmap to teach you how to do that. All of my courses are actually.
Yeah, and just a quick note again. It's not about, so for anybody listening, it's not about selling the book. It's about getting the book into your hands so that you can,
It's
like
about
Alyssa says,
helping. It's
yeah,
about
helping.
helping people,
Yeah.
and it's that's really what it's about, helping people. No, I don't really make any money off the book. It's published by a major publisher.
Yeah, you
They
make
get all
pennies.
the.
Yeah. It's about getting it out there, and it's
Yeah.
exciting to like a lot of the folks that are on the show with us here. You can see that after reading the book, they pick up, they start to progress. It's phenomenal. Like I listen to people like Nate, and Nate just, you can see that he's progressing. Whether he's read the book or not, I'm not sure, but he's getting all the information from the book on the show.
Yeah. And here we are on this show. We've been doing this show for 5 years, and we've given out an enormous amount of information, actually, and that's all for free. That's all on the website, available to anyone and everyone everywhere that
Yeah, you
wants to
can't
listen
you
to it.
you can't mention any topic and that we haven't covered on the show. And if you think there's a topic that we have never covered in on the show or in the podcast, let us know.
Yeah.
So Tracy says the book is awesome, so easy to understand, and the meditations are great. Thanks for writing it. Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you.
Appreciate your. Speaking of, I just want to make one note before we drop off, Leslie, and that's like I'd love for the people that are on the show to let other people that are of like mind know about the show, so they can come on and get some more people on the show and get the word out a little bit more for people, because it's the more people that come to the show, the different aspects of people will allow us to expand all of our breadth. As
Yes.
well as, if you like the show, please of course hit likes for us, so
Yes.
that the
And that,
numbers on YouTube.
that reminds me, if you do have a copy of the book and you've enjoyed the book, please go on Amazon and leave a review. Please leave a review, because that also means that more people will find out about the book and benefit from it. You can have amazing information that you put out there, but if it's another thing to get people to even have heard of it. Why are you
I'm,
laughing?
I'm sorry, we got to go, but Chrissy says, I just have a funny little thing to note. She says, I started reading your book and I have lost it recently. I'm hoping my intuition will help me find it where I replaced it in my own home.
Isn't that funny? I gave a copy to our neighbor and they started reading it, and then their son came and stole it from them. So I guess the book finds its way to people who are meant to get that information
Yeah.
as well.
And now we have to say goodnight to everybody. Time to go.
Yeah, it's been a really good show. Next week is about the sixth chakra, so don't miss that. We'll be talking about
Okay.
clairvoyance, and we'll be talking about abstract intuition in the next two shows. It's all about the third eye and being able to see energy, see your spirit guides, and more.
And Chrissy, good luck finding the book. Bye-bye now.
Use your pragmatic intuition
Bye. Take care,
to
everybody.
find it. Bye, everyone.